Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome. Welcome to the show. Thank you, everybody. Have you ever thought about writing a book or becoming a published author? I've found that most people have it on their bucket list of things to do, but very few follow through, let alone find a publisher. From the book Yours Till the End, we have best-selling author Shirley Kinsey on the show. Amazing book. I think you're going to find this story very interesting. We'll also be hearing about a very endearing story between a little young girl and her grandfather. And I think you're going to find this story very inspiring. Author of the new children's book, Boppy and Me, Gabrielle Mazur is on the show. One of my personal favorites. If you ever thought about authoring a book or you just value the importance of family in your life, this is an episode you won't want to miss. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Stick with us. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you. I'm joined by my dear friend, Ian Norris. Ian, how have you been?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing super fantastic.
Another week has passed.
Man, time goes by so fast, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. You co-hosted, I guess, a month or so. It's been a little bit, but any exciting stuff happening in your life?
Well, yes, for me. Of course, it's probably boring for most other people, but there's some flying-related things that have been happening. There's a new little airline coming into Gulf Shores that serves a number of airports down here, and then my wife and I have been crazy with our regular work.
Yeah.
I won't say anything especially exciting, but definitely things that have been keeping us occupied and busy.
Well, I know before the interview we were talking a little bit about both of our guests tonight are authors. And I know that I had asked you if you ever had an inspiration to write a book.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was motivated a little bit after I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week.
Mm-hmm. Now, which has turned into a huge brand.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's amazing how he's done it too.
Yeah.
But you know, I haven't, like you mentioned at the outset, I haven't exactly followed through on that section of my bucket list. But it definitely has led me in some other directions that I would not have gone in otherwise. So yes, it's something that maybe I might come up with something useful that people want to read about.
I found that book. It's one of my favorite books, and I recommend it to a lot of entrepreneurs. But I found it hard to read because there's so much information, and he actually says, just call this number or go to this website, and it gives you the context, too. So I would actually start reading the book, and then I'd have to set it down and go do it, and then I'd come back and say, okay, what's next?
Well, I used to do a lot of driving, and I used to listen to books on CD. But with that one, I found that I had to go out and buy the hardback, too, or the softback, because of all those website references. So, but that actually makes me think of a question, which is really the subject that I wanted to touch on tonight. When it comes to you in your business, your creative side, whatever it is that you're doing, what kind of an environment do you find helps you to be the most creative?
You know, I like to be around people. So one of the businesses that we have, my partner, he works very different than I do. His you know, idea of a perfect work environment is like total quiet with a laptop. And I can't do that. I like to have a boardroom with 10 guys around ordering in food and a lot of energy. I find that a little bit more conducive for my normal day-to-day.
Right. That's very interesting because it sounds like that you and your partner, that you're two examples of what they found to be the extremes. Because some researchers from the University of Illinois did some studies in this area. And they took their participants and put them in a 50 decibel environment, 70 decibel, 85 decibel, and a completely silent environment. So 4 different environments. And they actually found, long story short...
Who was right? That's all I need to know. Me or him?
Both of you, because that was what worked for you guys. But they found that those that were in the 70 decibel environment, somewhat of a background noise, but not excessive either way, they actually produced far more outstanding results than the other 3 divisions or groups. And for me personally, that was what it was like for me when I was studying at school, college, and all the other places. Usually just some sort of background white noise really helps.
Well, and I've noticed that with me, that's for regular work. The act of writing, for me personally, it does not come very easy at all. I have a new book coming out in September, and honestly, the deadline was supposed to be last Christmas, and before that, But it's just, it comes to some people where they just, but as soon as I get a tablet in front of me or I get in front of a laptop, I blank. So to me, there's other things I have to do to personally, you know, have the discipline of writing, but I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Everybody needs to find what works for them.
Well, you know, like I said, I kind of view myself as an entrepreneur that occasionally writes, but I wanted to bring out our first guest. She's actually, I think the act of writing comes a lot easier to her than mine. So please give a warm welcome to our guest, Shirley Kinsey.
Welcome.
Shirley, welcome. Nice to have a seat. Now, Shirley, I have to say that this book, you read so many books out there, you know, in what I do, I read a lot of business type books and sales and whatever it is. And it seems like most of the books, they've kind of been recycled and they're out there again. And even with novels, I noticed that a lot of ideas keep getting just recycled into a new format, like there's a vampire craze or there's some other craze, and it's just over and over. But I have to say, this book, obviously it's true, but it's really compelling. And I'm not sure if I've actually heard something exactly like this. I actually, preparing for the interview, I went through some of it, and I got so captivated into this. I told one of our producers today, I said, I have to have a copy of this book so I can finish it.
So I gave you one.
Really, and you did. You gave me one earlier. But I have to ask you, what helped you finally decide to write yours till the end?
Well, this pouch of letters that you have over here, we found this right after my mother's funeral.
Right.
And my dad fought in World War II with the Rainbow Division, the 42nd, and he had mailed all these letters home to her, and then he never saw them again. And he was as surprised as we were the day after her funeral when we were going through her possessions that we found this, my sisters and I. And it surprised him so much, and of course us too, you know, that we'd never seen those before.
Sure.
And so I took we made photocopies of these letters. You can open it and show that they're in there. This is the originals all in here of these V-mails that were received by my mom. And I made photocopies. Yeah, there's around 70 something of those letters.
Right.
And that small little form. And so I made copies of them and just began to transcribe them on my computer as a family project for my siblings and for my dad. And that's what I first did it for. And then it evolved into a book.
Yeah, sure. And, you know, really, we have to say, without finding this, probably there would be no book.
No, that's right. There would have been no book.
And I know that the way it was worded, I can picture like a bunch of small, like sisters on the floor. Your mom had just very recently passed away.
Right.
And they find this, and they're looking through, and then your father walks into the room and sees this pouch, which he immediately recognizes, and is like, I can't believe that she saved all of these letters from that period of time. How did that impact the family at that time, knowing that when he found out?
It was like finding a buried treasure.
Yeah.
Really, it was. It was buried underneath lingerie in one of my mom's dresser drawers, and my dad never knew that it was there. None of us ever knew that it was there. And we were just so amazed by it, you know. And my dad had not seen that pouch since he sent it to my mom from Paris more than 50 years before that.
Wow.
And so that was hidden a pretty long time.
Yeah. Well, hey, obviously, and I have to say, this is kind of unusual, I thought. The book became a bestseller in actually history and romance. And was it also in military? So those are three very different genres. How would you classify the book overall? Is it more of a romance, like a love story, or is it more of a military?
It's a war setting of a family story where the relationship of my mom and my dad during that, written in their letters, and what he was going through in Europe, because he was fighting in the European theater, and he would just take time between the battles and in the pillboxes or on the side of a Jeep or wherever he had a moment in a pup tent to sit down and write her a letter, and that was the gist of the whole story, is that those were kept all that time. Unknown to my dad and unknown to any of us.
Well, and I have to say, when you say find times here and there to write the story, I mean, I think some of it was kind of on his off time when he could kind of gather his thoughts. But there was a lot of times where he was actually on the front lines.
Right.
And in battle, while he was actually, bombs are going off, and
That's
he's
true.
trying to take a moment to pen this because, you know, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, so I got to get this out. So it was a pretty precarious situation.
That's true.
While he was writing a lot of this.
It was, and of course there was censoring done. They could only write so much. They could not give away anything about their location, where they'd been, where they were going, names or anything, and so, you know, they had to keep it brief.
Sure.
Now, with that in mind, though, he was able to provide you with a sort of a geographic journey, wasn't he, where he went from country to country?
Yes, and also, Dad and Mom had kept the copy of his combat history of his unit, the 42nd, and he was in the 242nd part of that. And I had that to correlate the letters between the history between the letters, because I was a history major at college, and I love World War II history.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was able to put it all together with the letters relating to the places that they actually were.
Yeah, I really like that combination there.
Well, it's ultimately probably made the book a little easier to write.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, when your dad came home and you growing up, did he talk much about his experience in the war? Or?
No, he really didn't. My dad, you know, we knew that he had fought in World War II, but I think like a lot of people that came home from the war, a lot of those men, they just they came home and went back to their family
pretty tight-lipped about it,
and they just put it behind them, sort of, and
move forward
with their life. He didn't talk about it. I never heard my dad speak of his war experiences when I was growing up.
I think a lot of them, probably the association of all those memories that come back, probably just try to put it as a chapter that happened and file it away.
Right.
Why do you feel like your mother had never, maybe, I don't want to say hid these letters, but maybe, I mean, 50 years, that's a long time for him not to know these exist. Why do you think that possibly happened?
Well, I think she just was like that too. I think she just packed it away. Well, it was in a cedar chest that my mom had, and when my oldest sister got married and Mom cleaned the things out of that, she put it into the dresser drawer, is what we figured out between the girls. And there, it was nobody ever got into things, and so nobody ever realized it was there. But I think that she just didn't think that it really would matter that much to anybody else, to the kids or anything.
Sure.
And of course it did when we found them all those years later.
And how old were you when you found the letter?
Well, this was and I was around 50.
50, okay. Yeah, because I think she's probably thinking, young kids, this isn't going to interest them. But as you get older, something like this is so precious.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like, obviously there's such a buzz still of this time period. People are fascinated with this era. Why do you think that is? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I think it's because whereas people may not be as interested in general in a war that happened 1,000 years ago, but because our parents, our grandparents, or we're part of it.
Sure.
You know, and so it relates more to our own family's experiences, I think, and I think that's why we're all so interested in that.
Yeah.
Doesn't it add a little bit of romance too, even though we're disconnected from what really happened? Don't we tend to see it as a sort of a romantic period?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we do. We do. And we've seen movies along that line.
Yeah.
Well, the book, I have to say, I'm very intrigued with it. I have to pretty much go home right after this and finish it.
I hope so.
Yours till the end. And tell us where we can get a copy of the book.
Amazon.com. Or just, you can go in any bookstore and ask for it. And if they don't already have it, then they can order it for you quickly.
Bookstores everywhere, or you can go to Amazon. Yours till the end. And thank you so much, Shirley Kinsey, everybody.
Thank you.
Please come back.
Thank you. I'd love to have you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be with Gabrielle Mazur, everybody. Stick around. Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome back. Welcome, everybody. I wanted to say many people write into the show and they ask us how they can be a part of the show, whether it be a part of the guest studio audience or maybe they have a great story they would like to tell. For that, please go to our website, tuesdayswithdan.com, or they can email us at info@tuesdayswithdan.com. And from the website, obviously, you can get our Facebook and Twitter link and all of that. Our next guest I'm very excited about. She's the author of the new children's book, Boppy and Me, Gabrielle Mazar, everybody.
Welcome.
A pleasure. How are you? I am really excited to have you on, and we've actually been talking for several months about having you on, and I'm particularly jazzed, and there's a couple of reasons why, which I'll share. But first of all, this is something my wife wanted me to work in there and kind of ask. I know that you work secularly, and you are a wife, a mother, also, of course, you're now writing. How do you find time to juggle everything? Millions of mothers and authors, for that matter, want to know.
Yeah, busy, right? Well, I'm not a very organized person by nature. My husband will tell you that. But I find that a routine definitely helps. Get into a routine and try to stick with it.
Yeah, and I can imagine with a young daughter, and she's
9.
9, okay, so I have a 5-year-old, and kids in general, I think, can be a handful. Yeah. So you have to probably multitask. Yeah, during the summertime. So I'm sure there's a lot of multitasking, and
yes.
I'm sure, of course, I know your husband, Paul, he helps a lot as well. What made you want, I think there's a difference between publishing a book and then having their aspirations to actually become a writer.
There is.
I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of an entrepreneur that writes. By no means do I look at myself as a writer. I can probably put one out and through the right team and convey my thoughts to where it's going to be
the actual
a good
process
book.
of writing.
Being a writer is
different.
much different.
Yeah.
What made you decide to kind of go that direction?
I've always wanted to be a writer. It's been kind of a closet dream of mine. So it's something that I'm actually doing now. So I'm finding it very fulfilling. But I've always loved books and words. So
I had a closet dream once. It was to be Bono, basically, but it didn't work out at all. And I think at this point, everybody just wants me to give up on that. Now, when becoming an author, was it everything that you anticipated it would be, or was it tougher? Because
no.
I found that there's a lot more to it than putting words to a paper and
it's not like you just sit at a desk and just write. There's so much more to it than that.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more involved because you want people to read the book that you write.
Hopefully.
You have to market it. You have to build a website. You have to create book trailers and learn how to do all these things first, of course. So there's a lot of research involved and the best way to go about all those things. So it's not about just the writing. The writing part of it is only about 5%.
Yeah, sure. In fact, I think I read that marketing, as far as success, marketing is about 95%, and the writing is 5%. Right. But have you found, I don't know if you'll agree with this, I found that if you take time, if you're thinking about writing a book and you take time to say, well, I got to learn how to get a website and drive people to it and do this and that, you'll probably never get started.
It
so
can
at
be
the same
overwhelming.
time, I think you got to kind of do what you did, is just dive in, get the book out, and then stick with it and figure out the rest you need to.
You do have to really see it like starting a business.
Yeah.
I had to get that mindset first, that it's like starting a business. There's a real entrepreneurial aspect to it. So if you want it to be a success. Because I actually had written books years ago, but it's a matter of getting them published and actually getting them made into a book.
Yeah, and I have to ask this, does the act of writing come easy to you, or me? It's some reason when I sit down with a tablet, I go blank. So what I found is I'll have audio or video, and then I'll transcribe that, and I'm just it doesn't happen for me. But does
I actually really like pen and paper, which is unusual. A lot of people
type.
I do that too, but first I actually like to write it. That way I can edit it as I go, scratch things out, and just.
I'm old school, just like you. Well, and I think you commit it to memory a little easier when you mark it up.
For sure, yeah.
I had a question for you. I wanted to ask you, you talked about the marketing and developing that at the same time, but did you actually discuss writing the book with your friends during the writing, or before you wrote it, or after the writing? I mean, how does that play in? Is it better to keep it quiet?
I hardly ever told anybody that I wrote. It was just something I did for me as like a therapy when I would get stressed or overwhelmed about something. I would just sit down and write. Of course, I'd have the idea in my head, but mostly I'd be inspired by my daughter or something like that, and I should write that down. My mom always told me, write it down.
Well, I had a chance to meet your daughter, and she could inspire most, I think. She's beautiful, but also she's very articulate, and she can hold a conversation. I mean, I talked to her one day for about 15 minutes, and I was just sitting there like, this is a very
She's real
interesting
creative
young lady.
too, but she's so different than I was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So that's why it makes me go, wow, yeah, it's very inspiring.
Well, speaking of her, tell us a little bit about the book, Boppy and Me.
Yes.
And what inspired the story?
Well, obviously, it's about my daughter and the relationship that she has with my dad, her grandfather, who she calls Boppy. They have a very, very tight bond. And I think it was just because they spent so much time together when they were, from the time she was a little baby all the way up. They just had a real unique relationship.
Well, and when you read the book, first of all, I have to comment on the illustrations. It almost looks like artwork.
It is.
When you see it, it's almost like an art book. It's so beautifully done, and I think it also really captures her as well. But
the illustrator did a fantastic job.
Yes, and it's just there's such a feeling that you get when you read this. Is there a certain thing that you wanted to convey to the readers in writing this? Maybe a point or a certain thing to take away?
Certainly.
I took a lot away.
It's just so important to never underestimate the value of spending time with small children.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times that job has been handed to moms or grandmothers, but actually for fathers and grandfathers too, to nurture a bond with a small child is very important.
And I have to say, was there a defining moment when you felt like, okay, I did it? Because as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, most people have this on their bucket list, like, I'm going to write a book. But when you actually had it in hand, and I know you're working on several of the stories, was there kind of that surreal moment when you felt like, hey, I did what I set out to do?
Yeah. Well, when you actually feel like you are an author, writing something is different than actually being an author or a writer. I would have to say it's that first time that on an introduction of meeting somebody new, when they shake your hand and say, so what do you do? And you actually
I'm an author. You have to embrace it.
I write children's books.
Right.
Instead of all the other things. Well, I work on the internet, or I'm a mom, or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
That first time where I actually said, I write children's books, I'm an author.
Yeah.
It kind of
And what was
blew
the
me away.
response you saw? Like, whoa, really?
Yeah, they're like, oh, they were very interested.
Yeah.
It made me very interesting.
Well, good for you. I'm so happy about this book. And I have a 5-year-old, and I'm always looking for, it seems like books, they've been taking turns, and there was a big surge of these really low quality bargain type children's books, and having a 5-year-old, I would pick up half a dozen, and what I found is my kid always wants to read the same one. So every night I'm like, what story do you want to read? This one. I'm like, we just read that one. Nope, that's what I want. They recognize quality, and I think now there's a really big call for quality. People are tired of all the volume of books, and we'd rather just get our hands on one that's
And I wanted
really
to write something that the grown-ups who are reading the book to the child would actually enjoy also, that they wouldn't just be like, no, not that one, let's do this one.
Yeah, sure. Where can we get the book?
GabrielleMazurBooks.com is my website. You can learn more about it there. It's on Amazon.com and bookstores everywhere.
Okay, and Gabrielle Mazur is M-A-U-Z.
M-A-Z-U-R.
Z-U-R. Okay, we got it. Well, please come back. I know we talked briefly that you have a few other ideas of books that you're working on, so we'd love to have you come back. Thank you very much for being on.
Thanks
Gabrielle Mazur, everybody. We also, wow, they love it. We also want to give a thank you to Shirley Kinsey. And thank you so much, both of you, for coming on. I think that you've inspired me to get out there and start writing a little more. I've kind of fallen by the wayside with my writing. But that's our show, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to get involved in your local community and be forgiving of others. Good night, everybody. Hi, I'm Dan Vega, and thank you for watching our channel. I want to take a second to tell you about a resource that's helping thousands of people across the country, Blue University. Blue University is the premier online business school for entrepreneurs and business leaders. You know, if you find yourself in a day-to-day grind where you've lost your joy or you're just tired of struggling, then check out blue.university. That's BLU.university. I can promise that you receive nothing short of a multi-million-dollar education. And if you want a completely different life in 3 to 6 months and a way to create wealth in 5 years or less, then again, check it out. That's BLU.university. Find out why blue is the new color of success. Also, make sure to subscribe to this channel or to give us a good rating, but that's only if you see value. And when you do receive value, make sure to share it with someone else. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.